Welcome back to Circles and Spaces. My name is Azande and I'm joined by my wonderful host. Hello.
Hello everybody, I am Charlie.
Oh, Charles. And if you don't know, Circles and Spaces is a podcast where we invite people from different parts of the world with different perspectives, who we just want to hear from, and we believe that is valuable for you guys to also hear from. And today we have none other than Jason. And Jason is a new friend, and we flew him out. That's what we did. We was like, you need to be with us on this day when we record. But Jason, I don't know if you know about Circles and Spaces. It's very big on hearing about maybe more about your weaknesses, things that you've done wrong in the past, things that you like, if I got a handle of this, then life would be so much better. But it's not because we're trying to expose you, but we're just trying to help other people feel as if they're not alone. So is there anything that you'd like to share?
Am I here? You flew me out for me to tell you all of my mistakes. This is a surprise.
This is the only footage we're going to use.
Well, that's great. Well, yeah, I've made plenty of mistakes in my life. Would you like to narrow it down for me? Are you talking about...
Is there one that you like...
In ministry? Is that what we're talking about?
Do you know what? I would like to know just a personal one, Jason, actually.
Okay,
if that's okay.
Yeah, well... You know, I think the biggest mistake that I've made in my life, or maybe the biggest mistakes, have been centered around just a sense of inadequacy and insecurity, and not having good counsel in my life, and not feeling like people would want to speak into my life. And so I made a lot of decisions on my own for a long time, because I didn't feel like people really wanted to be a part of my decision making. And I missed out on some great counsel. Wow. Because I was so insecure. That would go back to parents leaving and divorce, and just feeling like, hey, there weren't people who really wanted to speak into my life. And so, I think we all deal with senses of inadequacy and insecurities. But I've made some bad decisions in my life because I didn't seek good counsel.
No, I really hear that. And one of the things that you mentioned was that you are a father of 7.
Yeah, that's right.
Sorry, everyone, you heard that right. 7.
Yeah.
Tell us a little bit about that.
Well, yeah, we have 7 kids. You know, I had a little boy and a little girl. They were 5 and 2, and then life got really hard for me, and I went through a divorce and I didn't want it. It was really painful, and so I spent a few years sort of recovering from that and healing from that. And I ended up later meeting my wife, who had also gone through something very painful. She had 4 kids, 6 and under, when she became a single mom. And I met her 5 years later, and we began a friendship because we had a lot in common. And then we dated and then got married. And a year after that, we accidentally made one more. So 2 plus 4 plus 1. That's how we got to 7.
And you were saying that, was it 5 of them were college at one time?
Yeah, we had 5 in the university at the same time. And so that's trickled down now to 3. One more is about to graduate in May, so we're down to 1 in university after this year. Yeah, wow. And 1 at home.
Wow, incredible. And I want to know what's like your favorite thing about raising children, and more specifically raising teenagers? Yeah.
Oh, I love it. I mean, we have tried to create a culture in our home, and I would say parenting's probably the most difficult thing in the world. And I think the biggest responsibility that I have is creating a culture in our home of how we all interact with each other. And so we've created that culture where people can, everyone is very different, and they're very unique. And so we haven't wanted to make people fit into a mold. And so we have a couple who have decided, hey, college, university isn't for them, and so that's great. We want to help people find and fulfill their callings and their passions in life, what God's calling them to do, and that's different for each one of them. So my favorite thing is seeing people grow into who they really want to be, and whether that be with people they're dating or their ministry or their vocation. That's what we've really enjoyed.
I love, just before we started recording, you said something along the lines of your relationship with your children has almost changed as they've got older. You've changed from being almost like a coach to more like a friend. And I just loved that. But for those at home wondering who is Jason Shepperd,
I just love that. I went in first name. I was just like, we're with Jay here today. I'm so sorry.
Already on like nickname terms. Jason Shepperd, lead pastor of Church Project. Could you tell us a little bit about Church Project? And I actually want to throw a quote on your website that I'd love you to talk us through as well.
Okay.
It says, "We want to change the way people see Christ, Christians, and the church." Mm-hmm. Could you unpack that and maybe a little bit about Church Project and what you guys do?
Yeah, well, 13 years ago, I started this thing called Church Project, and it came out of a lot of years of being in church, growing up in church, reading the Bible, traveling around the world to almost 40 countries and seeing the church work, seeing church history, and feeling a real disconnect between what I had experienced and what I read about in the Bible. And I had to think, if this was happening in the scriptures and God shared this with us and told us to do this, then he would want this to continue. But I had not been a part of anything. I was a part of things that were good, but there's a verse in the Bible that says they had a form of godliness, but they denied its power. And I felt like church for me had a form of godliness, but really denied its power. And I longed for what I read about in the scriptures, where they were selling their goods and possessions and meeting each other's needs, and the way that they just loved being together. And I couldn't find the context in any place I'd ever been a part of where this kind of community really happened, where people were helping each other grow in their faith, where older and younger people were living life together, where rich and poor, regardless of background, regardless of place in their faith, were living in community. And so I couldn't find it, and so I felt like I needed to try to create it. And that was the name Church Project. It actually was never intended to be our name. It was an idea. And I like to tell thousands of people that they go to a church without a name, you know. And so the idea, the phrase, we want to change the way people see Christ, Christians in the church, is we want to change the way people see Christ. Yeah. You know, all the things that we've talked about this weekend with Alpha, and the way that the world is thinking about Jesus, I want to help them understand who Jesus really is. So I want everyone that we encounter to change the way they see Christ. I want them to change the way they see Christians in the United States, especially. We're coming out of an era where people don't have a great perspective of what it means to be a Christian. Yeah. So when you say you're a Christian, people aren't always impressed. No. And so I want to change the way people see Christians. And we should be the most loving, caring, generous, gracious people on the planet. And so we want to change the way people see Christ. We want to change the way they see Christians. We want to change the way people see church. People have seen church so embedded in one idea for hundreds of years now, and we really lost the church in the scriptures, and we created some form. And so we're trying to change the way people see church.
And can you unpack that for me? So I guess the way we see church, I guess, goes for both Christians and non-Christians, the way that we see church. And you've talked a little bit about church in the scriptures and now church what we see now, and the disconnect that you felt.
Yeah.
What was that disconnect? What were the things that are different now compared to what you were reading in the scriptures?
Well, you know, when the church started, we have this guy named the Apostle Paul, and all the apostles, they came out of a form. And that was a primary place and a primary priest. Like, if you want sacred things to happen, you have to go to this special building, the synagogue or the temple, and this special person, the clergy, they'll make it happen for you. And so for sacred things to happen, you had a primary place and a primary priest. But when Jesus came onto the scene, and then he started his church, right, he said, wherever you gather, I'm going to be with you. Like, you don't have to have a sacred place. You can do sacred things. I'll be with you there. And the priest of the believer, like all of us, are equipped to do these things. And so we wanted to create a place where we could all serve one another in community, and it wasn't just some person with a suit or a robe somewhere where the sacred things happen in a special building. And so we're changing the idea that churches, the leadership of church and the giftings for the church are reserved for special, elevated, and separated clergy. And so we've really distributed power back to the people, and we've decentralized it. Like, we're a church of thousands of people in our one location, and there are other locations with people. We have no phone number. We have no foyer, no building for you to come to. If you want to get to the church, you find a house church closest to you. And now you're going to be in a community immediately. And so these are some of the things that we're pursuing, yeah.
This is so incredible. I'd love to shift the question, but then also bring it back to what you've just said, because I think it's really important. So the thing is with young people is that they'll follow tradition. However, I think that actually they're not bound by it. They're willing to look at things differently. They're willing to do things differently. Like, work is different for them. Church is different for them. Relationships are different for them. How do you feel like the way that you are like reframing even the way that you guys are doing church is beneficial for young people? But just to go back to the other question, your other answer is, if you are decentralizing everything, I'm guessing, to some degree, how are you still ensuring that when our young people who are already very skeptical about faith feel as if there is a consistency and an alignment and a culture and identity still, and also there's like the theology is still there? So I'm guessing these people that are doing it all in their homes are very qualified, I'm guessing. But with young people, they want to be like, okay, this is incredible. You've created an environment for me where I feel as if I can go there and belong. But is it truth? Is it still teaching? So that's what I'd love to know.
No, that's great. Well, so I wrote a book on this called A Church of House Churches. It's just some phraseology that we coined to help describe what we think a church is. And so we are one church of many house churches. And so, but I think there's some DNA in the Bible that describes what a church is. And one, it's decentralized, away from primary place and priest. It's distributed pastoral leadership. We haven't reserved pastoring. We have doctors and attorneys and firemen who are doing weddings and funerals and visiting people in the hospital, and baptizing people in pools and making sure people's needs are cared for. And so we've distributed pastoral leadership. But the third D of this DNA is diverse discipleship communities. When we look at the church in the Bible, we see a lot of diversity, racially, yes, but also generationally, socioeconomically, spiritual maturity. The Apostle Paul said, hey, let's help the mature, help the immature reach maturity in their faith. Let's have the older people teach the younger. And so though so much is changing in culture, one thing that will always remain is everybody wants to be loved. They want a place to be accepted. People need people. And so what people are attracted to, we're finding, especially younger people who may be disconnected from their families, they have a spiritual family here, and they have mentors here. Yes. We want younger people really want older people to speak into their life and to care about them and to walk with them. But where do you find that? Even if you walk into a church on a Sunday morning and there's older and younger people there, how do I get into a relationship with you? How do I sit in a living room with you or across the table from you and have a conversation? But here, this diversity is embedded into our ecclesiology, because we just gather geographically. So you find the house church closest to where you live, and that house church is going to have people from married, unmarried, older, younger, rich, poor, spiritually mature, spiritually immature. We're all walking with each other. But no, I think the centralized part, that a church has never been fully decentralized. The Apostle Paul would say, Titus, go here and appoint leaders here. But like Titus chapter 1 in the Bible, Paul told Titus, the reason I sent you to this island of Crete was to straighten out what was unfinished. He said, put the church together, and then appoint elders and teach them what's in accord with sound doctrine. So the leadership that we have, it's appointed, and we ensure sound doctrine. So we're meeting with them, we're training them, they're accountable to us. We're all moving together through the passages of Scripture together every week. So there's a lot of accountability. Every one of our house church pastors is pastored by someone on our team, and they're met with regularly. Before someone becomes a house church pastor, they're vetted and trained theologically. We have ongoing relationships. So all of our house church pastors are accountable. They're supported. They're trained. Yeah, we're accessible to them.
Amazing.
I'm fascinated and loving this. So I want to ask, how does it work practically? So what does a Sunday look like at Church Project? Is it everyone meeting in their homes? Are they all gathering together? And if they are all gathering together, what does the midweek look like practically?
Yeah.
I think for someone like me who's used to only ever seeing the model that you've described of, church looking how we all kind of know church to look at the moment, it's a hard one to think about practically, because I love the idea of it, but I'm like, how does it work?
Yeah.
How does it actually practically run?
I get it. Well, it's really simple. I mean, we see in the Old Testament and the New Testament and in heaven that God enjoyed his people getting together and worshiping, studying the scriptures together. And so we do that. A lot of ideas that are called micro churches or house churches, they forsake the gathering of people together. But it's a beautiful thing for people to get together and worship and hear the scriptures taught. We don't want to forsake that. So we have very simple Sunday gatherings. In fact, we own a very large building, but I tell people don't own a building unless you're going to share it with your city. Wow. And then steward it. So our buildings are, we're trying to change the way churches are planted around the world by, if you get space, make sure it's a space that you can share with your city throughout the week, and then steward it. Like, our spaces pay for themselves. Like, we're mortgage neutral. And so we design space because space is not sacred, but sacred things happen in space. Most church buildings would be designed for something to happen a couple of hours a week, but then it's unusable by the city the rest of the week because of its design. So we're getting into spaces and designing and redesigning spaces that we can share with our city. So people are, from blood drives to ministry meetings, any ministry in our city can use our building for free, and then we steward it. We rent it out. We have businesses that'll come and use our space and rent it out for their events. And that we lease out certain space, one to schools. We have one of our buildings is leased out to pickleball. It leases out part of the space every day. And so we steward the spaces. They pay for themselves, and then more money can go to ministry, to helping people and planting churches. And so, we gather on Sundays, but like I tell our church, we borrow this building, even though we own it. We borrow it for a couple of hours on Sunday, and then we share it with the city throughout the week. And so we have a Sunday gathering. So thousands of people come together every Sunday morning. That's a front door for some people who are just investigating this idea. They're not sure what this is about. So they can go sit in a room with a couple of thousand chairs, but we let people know you can't get community in this room. Wow. Nobody can really know you. You can't have a conversation here. That's not what this is for. It's for something very important, but something different. But something even more important is waiting for you, and that's a community and a family, and we want to help you find it. And so before they leave or when they're coming in, we have an army of people that are just having personal conversations with anyone who walks in the door, and they can lead them. We have just a quick app, and we lead you to a house church closest to you. And so, that's what happens on Sunday. But then Sunday nights and Wednesday nights, house churches are gathering all across our city. So if you pull up our Church Project app or our Church Project website, you just find a map, find the house church closest to you, and go.
Amazing. I love the thought that the work of the church, as in creating church, is going out into the city, but then the actual building of the church is drawing people into this, into community and into church being this place that's like, hey, come play pickleball. Hey, come have a gig. Come do this. And I think that's, to me, I don't know why, I just saw the image of you guys as the church being out and then everybody somehow finding themselves coming in. Yeah. And I think it's really huge. And also, I've become a huge fan of pickleball, and I think I might be getting very good. And I feel as if pickleball is for those that cannot play tennis properly.
That's what I've said to you before. Yeah. It's not a real sport.
You're like, it's not real. And I'm like, I'm amazing at it. So it is real.
It has to be real. I need it to be real.
Yeah. Do you play pickleball?
No, I've only played once. I went and played with the people who own it. I after they got in, I played with them once, but that was it.
Nice.
Yeah, but I'm good at tennis.
Oh, there we go.
Here we go.
We've got to
So
play
is
this
Charlie.
week, Jason. USA versus Britain. Here we go.
Do you know what, Jason? So was Charlie. Charlie's really good.
Really?
So maybe I'm so jealous. There's a tennis court right there, actually. Yeah.
Going back to that though, I love the idea of your church has almost bought this building and then gifted it to the community around you. I think that's just beautiful, and I love the idea of the pastors being literally in a house with their flock.
Yeah.
Man, they're just so accessible. There's no I guess it'd be really hard for a pastor to gain any sense of ego in that situation.
Right.
And
exactly.
And it'd be really hard to almost put a pastor up on a pedestal in that situation as well.
Incredible.
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, when we put all the weight of the church on a single person, that's why people crumble, and that's why they fall into sin, and that's why people get discouraged. But now this person is just like me. I'm sitting in a living room with him. He went to work today, you know, they have a real job, you know, and so, but that's what God wanted for us. He wanted a pastor available to all the people. And so really we have a pastor over a house, but we read it in the Bible, right? The church that meets in so-and-so's house. We see it all through the scriptures. And so as that spread, it would be one church made up of many house churches. They would gather together for maybe teaching or worship, but all of the life happened through the house church. It's pretty clear in the Bible.
And then in terms of young people, so oftentimes what we'll see in churches is there's a whole separate program for kids, for youth, for young adults, for everyone. How does this work within your church? Are there separate programs that young people attend or go to?
Yeah.
Or is it super intergenerational? How do you guys work that one out?
Well, you know, our house churches are intergenerational. But we still have some things, especially for youth. You know, I want my kids to go to camp or on a retreat and have friends from church. And so we have that for younger kids and for youth. We'll have a small group for them. But for everything else above youth, it's just all connected. But for, let's just say, a college-age student or a 28-year-old or a 30-year-old who moved to our town and have a job, well, they have a family in a house church, but we want them to have a friend. So let's just say a young adult, a 25-year-old in house church number 2, wants to know a 25-year-old in house church number 12 and 22 and 32 and 42 and 52 and 62, right? So how do we have them know each other without creating a separate community? So we have events that will connect people all across house churches. So maybe single moms, we'll have an event for them. So we may rent out a restaurant and have them a night where they come and meet other single moms, so they'll create friendships. But we don't want them to have all their community in just single moms because they need a family. Absolutely. And so we don't create alternative communities, but we have events across our thousands of people in our church where people can connect and get to know each other and have friendships.
Incredible. I would love to know, obviously, you, please do have some water. I feel as if you're, Jason, really getting everything out of you. I feel as if, I know it's going to sound weird, Jason, but like, I feel as if like you've got this, and this is just me being very honest, I think you've got this amazing ability to like father people. And I'm guessing that's why you lead a church, and I'm guessing that's why you're a pastor, because God's called you into that space. But like, you're incredibly pastoral, and it's just like, it's like sitting with your dad and having a chat. I hope you don't mind me saying that.
And it makes me feel good.
And it's like,
and come into my family.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
and it doesn't feel like, and I think it's because of the culture that you've created within your church. It doesn't feel like you're like some pastor coming to give us this like mad knowledge. It just feels like you're literally sharing the way you live your life. And it's really beautiful to hear, just by the way.
Thanks for saying that. It's really encouraging. Thank you.
I do hope that the you understand that the tone here isn't us trying to like grill. Like, I'm just genuinely, I feel like we just sat here and asked you so much about your church.
Y'all are great at having this conversation. I mean, I'm loving the conversation. I love the way you're leading it. Y'all keep doing what you're doing, because, I mean, I like the questions that you ask. They're meaningful. They matter. You know, it's things that people are wrestling with. And so you're doing a great job.
Okay, good. Okay, we're back. No, but I was just thinking, the reason why you're doing church this way is because God has obviously spoken to you really clearly about it. In terms of the future, how do you see it evolving? Do you have like a way in which you see it working going forward, like 5-10 years from now? Obviously, it's in God's hands, but is there like, my dream for the way we're doing church is to produce this, or to help people be evangelists, to help people? Is there like real clarity for yourself? And it doesn't have to be for why you're doing church this way, but also where you see it going and evolving in the next 5-10 years.
That's a great question. There's a lot of rethinking going on today, but we use the phrase rethink and return. We're not creating the church. It's already been created. Our job is to return as closely as possible to what Jesus intended the church to be. Yeah. And so we're rethinking by returning. And we think that Jesus' original idea of the church, even the way we gather together, not just what we teach, but how we live together, we think that's enduring. And I heard someone say one time, the most relevant things are timeless. And so the things that are most relevant are timeless. And so I think God's design for the church is really timeless. The church in Acts, immediately when it started, it had people from all over the world at Pentecost, right? And so they were put into this one church. They stayed for a little while to get the apostles' teaching. And then they took the gospel, not only the gospel, though, they took the way that they gathered as a new community of people, they took that around the world. And so the church that God originally designed for us and told us about in Scripture was made for every country, every culture, every language, I think for all people in all places for all time. So we're not going to have a different form of church. This is enduring, but we want to become more mature in it. And so, and as we grow centrally, we continue to plant. Just 3 weeks ago, another church project launched 12 or 15 minutes down the road from us. Their own elders, their own building, a core of house churches, a couple hundred people. So we're planting churches out of our church, another one up the road just 15 minutes from us. We continue to do that, but we're really about planting church projects, which for me, that word just means in ecclesiology now. We're doing this all over the world, and so we're meeting with church leaders and helping them rethink and return to what Scripture taught us about church. So we believe a more mature version of who we are. We continue to grow, but not a different model. More mature, and then more churches like this planted in different places. That's what we're giving our life to.
Wow. That's so cool. Sorry, it's so cool. My mic. Where was my mic?
Both of our mics are just on the floor,
the mics
like
are not,
looking at
they're
Jason.
not with us. I love the last question that you had. Yeah, do you want to ask it?
Yeah. This is completely switch up. I guess it's probably all we've got time for
Literally.
now as well.
Yeah.
The final question, Jason. Take yourself back to being an 18-year-old Jason.
Mm-hmm.
What would Jason today say to 18-year-old Jason?
Well, that's a great question. It's a good question for the last question. Good job. You know, I had a guy tell me this once. I had never met him. God sent this man into my circle. I was around him for one day, and he spent a little bit of time with me. And I had a conversation with him because I was in college. I was really insecure. I was unsure about so much in my life. And he said these words, and I'm from Texas. And so he said some sort of Texan words to me, but he said, "Sit loose in the saddle, son." He said, "It's not your job to discover God's will. It's God's job to reveal his will to you. Your job is to listen and obey." And so I remember those words, "Sit loose in the saddle. It's not my job to discover God's will. It's God's job to reveal his will to me. Yeah. My job is to listen and obey." And I would tell myself, the sovereign God who loves you better than any father can love his own child is going to be walking with you at every step of your life. He wants to use you more than you want him to use you. He can open doors that you can't open for yourself. His timing is better than your timing. So just enjoy God loving you and leading you, and just listen and obey. And so I would tell myself that. I would tell myself what he told me, and I would keep telling myself that. And by the way, I have to keep telling myself that now.
Great.
And so the same words that I tell myself now, I wish I was telling myself then, earlier, because the reality is that God does love us. He is very personally involved in our lives. He sees where we are. He wants to use us even more than we want him to use us. But he really delights in us. And I wish I would have enjoyed God more. When people ask me, what are the mistakes you made planting a church? I made some. That's a leadership podcast I could tell about. But the biggest thing is I didn't enjoy every season, every size, every stage. I just didn't enjoy it. I was too driven for what was next. And I missed out on a lot of life because I was so driven for what was next. And so I think some people can have no drive and no ambition and no direction. Of course, that's not good. We have value that we want to put into the world. But I think we can be so driven that we miss the moments of just living and enjoying life. And so I would say, sit loose in the saddle, just listen and obey, and enjoy those moments.
I think we've got the name of the podcast, the title, Sit Loose in the Saddle. Thank you. Wow. What a privilege, genuinely, Jason, to just sit and share time with you, and for you to even take time of you're on holiday essentially, but you've decided
it's a work trip. It's a total work trip.
Don't out him.
He's like, I'm going to Harrods later. No, but you're here, and you could have been doing anything with this hour, but you decided to come and share and sit with us, and we genuinely appreciate it. And you're part of the family now. You're part of Circles and Spaces. But if people are like shook by everything that you've said, like we are, I don't know if the US used that word, shook.
Yeah.
But shooketh.
I think we made it up.
I thought we were cool.
Of course.
No, but like, how can people first of all get connected to everything that you're doing? And I want people to follow you and know who you are, because I think you're awesome. So is there any way of like people just connecting with you and everything that you're doing?
No, thanks for that. Well, first, I feel honored that you asked me to be here. So thank you. I love the work that you're doing, and I'm discovering more of that. I think what you're doing is really important. So thanks for doing it. Keep doing it. I'm honored that you invited me here. Thank you. I was saying, like my social media, I generally use just to show what it's like to be a dad and a husband and a father. So I don't do much of my teaching through social media. So my Instagram is open, but it's not like leadership or pastoring. It's really, I just show what I do with my family. I think that's really important for people, because sometimes people say, oh, thanks for showing us that you took your wife on a vacation. I need to take my wife on a vacation. Incredible. Or I never saw my parents go on a vacation together, and so I just use my social media just for that. But for stuff about what we're talking about, ecclesiology, the way church is formed, jasonshepperd.com. It's a janky little website. I'll use the word janky here. Yeah. All right, did y'all make that up? Yeah.
We wish.
It's a janky little website. But it's just a thing just to sort of gather all these things. I have some short writings that people can download on what the church is, and a book. If people want to dig a little bit more into that, it's a janky little book. I just wrote it myself. But Shepherd is P-P-E-R-D, S-H-E-P-P-E-R-D.
Thank you for that.
Yeah,
really
somebody
helpful.
spelled it wrong down the way, and I wish they would have done it differently. But jasonshepperd.com, yeah.
Incredible. So this has been Circles and Spaces, and we've absolutely loved that you guys were able to join us. If you want to know more, find out more about what Alpha Youth is, please go to our Instagram and our socials. It's Alpha YTH, which is youth. And Charlie, they can email us, can't they?
They can. It's youth@alpha.org.
Charlie forgot. It's all good. Just email us. Also, our DMs are open. We'd love for you to tell us what you want to hear, who you want on the podcast. So please just send us a voice note. Maybe you're having a bit of a dilemma. Send us a voice note. We love that. But this has been Circles and Spaces. I'll see you soon. Thank you.